Now, over the last 24 hours, we have seen very large rainfall totals across the Greater Sydney area into the Hunter and mid-North Coast. Now, that rainfall will be continuing, and we will be seeing rainfall across the New South Wales coast. But really, it's the mid-North Coast today that is getting hit once again. And tomorrow, we are expecting rainfall to re-intensify for this particular region. So again, being really mindful for the communities out there. You have already experienced some very dangerous conditions, and they are going to be treacherous yet again. So keep a close eye on warnings, and again, expecting those river rises and that flood risk to continue. Now, tomorrow, the other key area of concern will be the northern inland of the state. We are seeing a rain band that will move across the state from the west, bringing significant falls to the northern inland, including areas such as the northwest slopes and plains. Now, for those regions, we could see totals up to 4 times the March monthly average falling in just 2 days. So for the communities in inland New South Wales, in the north and west, northwest slopes and plains, be really aware and alert of the fact that flood risk is heading your way. Now, that rain band will move across the state on Tuesday, so again, bringing more rainfall, but we are also likely to see a low-pressure system develop on the south coast, again, bringing heavy rainfall to this particular region. It's likely to combine moisture from both this rain band as well as moisture off the coast, which will act as a conveyor belt, bringing in those heavy falls on Tuesday, specifically for that south coast area. So again, just for the communities on the mid-north coast, for the northern inland regions, northwest slopes and plains, really being alert of the current flood risk, current warnings. But then again, for Tuesday, south coast, again, being aware of the fact that we are going to see some rainfall there. Now, as some good news, Wednesday is when we are expecting to have a real proper break in the weather. There'll still be a shower or two, bit of activity, but significantly lighter rainfall. So Wednesday will be our first day where we can see a bit of reprieve across the state. Now I'll hand over to my colleague Justin to talk us through the current flood situation.
Okay, thank you, Agatha. I guess I'll start. I'm concerned, the Bureau is very concerned about the flooding in the Hawkesbury-Nepean Valley. Last night we experienced very heavy rainfall, especially in the area around Penrith. We had the dam commencing to spill yesterday afternoon, and we also have floodwaters coming down the upper Nepean River system. So at Penrith, we're expecting river levels at Penrith to be levels near the 1961 flood. Just to give you some context around, that is bigger than the February 2020 flood. It is bigger than the 1988 flood. It is bigger than the 1990 flood, and it's bigger than the 1964 flood. It's one of the biggest floods that we're likely to see for a very long time, and that floodwater at Penrith is expected to then move downstream and impact those communities at North Richmond, Windsor, Sackville, and further downstream. And it's really, really important that community members listen very closely to the instructions from the New South Wales SCS about potential evacuations. They keep current with the Bureau's flood warnings. Our flood warning team is fully concentrated on updating those forecast predictions for the Hawkesbury-Nepean Valley today, and we're providing updates every 3 hours or more frequently if the situation changes. So it's very important to keep that. When they get updated, we'll be issuing an update on both Twitter to make sure you know the updates are available, plus we'll be making sure they're quickly available on the Bureau's website and working very closely with our community and emergency response partners. So the way we're expecting this situation to evolve, so at Penrith, the river levels there are still rising, and we're expecting the river levels to peak later today, and then over the next couple of days, that flooded water will then move downstream and start impacting North Richmond, Windsor and Penrith. So like I say, it's very important just to keep across those updates as this flood event unfolds. And just reiterating, it's a very dangerous flood situation. And my feeling really goes out to those people in those local communities that are being impacted. and also those communities along the mid-north coast who were impacted over the past couple of days. I might stop there and I can take some questions. Or no, we're going to go to Greg, Dean, SES.
Thanks, Justin. Good afternoon, everyone. We are experiencing a serious, potentially life-threatening weather event at this time, and that will continue to affect a large part of the state for the coming days. So the key message from the State Emergency Service at this time is all communities need to be aware of their risk and plan and prepare accordingly. This is a serious situation that we're currently facing. Close to 1,500 SES volunteers are currently in the field supporting our communities alongside our emergency service partners and government agency partners. It is an all-agency, all-government response to this unfolding dynamic situation. So again, we're urging the communities to be aware of your risk, plan and prepare accordingly. If you're aware of friends or family who are in high-risk areas, reach out to them, make sure they're aware of the current situation and that they are planning accordingly. There are dozens of flood warnings, evacuation warnings and evacuation orders currently in place across the state. These are very serious situations. The community needs to heed that advice and those directions immediately. Where you live or where you are currently located is subject to a flood warning, prepare accordingly, understand what that means for your local area. If where you are currently is subject to an evacuation warning, that means you need to prepare yourselves and your families and your pets and animals right now for potential evacuation. You may choose to self-evacuate, and that would not be a bad decision if you have that option available to you. If where you are residing is subject to an evacuation order, you must leave immediately. Do not delay, leave immediately, follow the advice and the direction of the authorities on the ground. They will tell you where you need to go and what options you have. If you have somewhere where you can go, a place of safety with friends or family, please plan that in advance and take care of yourselves, your family and your friends. Obviously, the other key safety messages are extra important this time as well. Avoid unnecessary travel. If you don't need to be on the roads, stay off the roads. If you do need to be on the roads, drive to the conditions. The weather is obviously very challenging at this point in time when it comes to the roadways. Many roads are closed. There are landslips across the state. Understand where you need to go and the route you need to take. Follow livetraffic.com to plan accordingly if you need to be on the roads. But again, if you don't need to be on the roads, please stay off the roads. In a life-threatening emergency, please call 000. If you need assistance from the SES for flood or storm damage, please call 132 500. Obviously, our call centre is heavily inundated at this time with phone calls. Everyone's doing their best and working as hard as they can to support our communities. As I said, we've got thousands of SES volunteers currently in the field, 24/7 supporting the community. Just since this event commenced on Thursday, SES volunteers have responded to 7,000 requests for assistance from our community, and that's increasing exponentially by the hour. There have been over 650 flood rescues during that time as well, and it's, I guess, an opportunity to really appeal to the community not to drive through floodwaters. It's not worth the risk. You're creating significant risk to yourselves, to your families, and also to the rescuers who would need to come and save you. So stay off the roads, don't drive through floodwaters. Please follow the advice of the local authorities. Monitor your local weather conditions through the Bureau and advice from the SES on its website, on social media, on local radio, and the number of other avenues available to you. This is a very dynamic, serious weather situation, and the SES is asking for the community to do its part in helping us respond as a state. Thank you.
Justin, a question for you. I guess probably the main risk right at the moment is what we're seeing in the back Western Sydney and Hawkesbury Pen. Can you give us a quick sense of what the timeline looks like it's going to be, what people are going to see over the next sort of 12 to 24 hours roughly?
At the moment, we're seeing the river levels rise rapidly at Penrith, and we're expecting that to peak later today. And for those downstream locations, so for example at North Richmond, those river levels will also continue to rise during today, but we're not expecting those to peak overnight tonight into Monday. And similarly down at Windsor, further downstream, that will probably peak late Monday into Tuesday. But like I said, everything's changing, especially the timing of those peaks. We're expecting that major flooding really to start happening. It's already happening currently at North Richmond, and that will continue to rise at those locations throughout the day and until tomorrow.
So just how dynamic is the situation out there? It does seem to be changing fairly regularly and keeps seeming to get worse as it's progressing. Just how volatile is it out there at the moment in terms of what's going on?
So we had very, very heavy rainfall last night, especially around that area of around the Penrith area, and that is where we're currently seeing these very rapid river level rises. I'm hopeful once we start seeing peaks at Penrith, then we might see a bit more certainty around our forecasts downstream, and that will really help those communities impacted prepare and for the SES response. But like I said, it's really important for community members to stay across those updated warnings during today.
And in terms of the mid-north coast we've seen again overnight some of those rivers that looked like they were holding and plateauing starting to go back up again as well.
So we've got widespread minor to moderate flood warnings across a large number of river systems on the mid-north coast. Our expectation, while some rivers will see renewed rises during today, we're not expecting those rises to be as high as what people experienced previous in the last few days.
Okay.
Dee, quick question for you. You mentioned earlier there's been 650 flood rescues. Obviously, some people aren't hearing the warnings that if it's flooded, forget it. So how can you explain to people what situation they might find themselves in if they do venture into floodwaters?
Yeah, floodwaters can be very deceiving. What may have been a very safe roadway or bridge before the flood overtopped it, may see a situation where that road and that bridge isn't there anymore. But that's not obvious to the driver as they're about to cross. So you just don't know what's below the surface. Roadways commonly are washed away. It doesn't take much water for vehicles to become stalled or be swept away as well. It's just not worth the risk. It's a situation that can change from a reasonably stable one to absolute tragedy in a matter of seconds. People should not enter floodwaters. They shouldn't drive, ride, walk or play in floodwaters. Find another way, stay at home or stay in a safe location.
And apart from flood rescues, what other types of tasks are really keeping your volunteers out on the ground busy at the moment, and whereabouts are they the busiest?
Well, the impact area is so wide at this point in time. SES volunteers from across the state are currently active in the field. Areas that are perhaps less impacted are sending teams to support those areas that are more heavily impacted. We have engaged support out of state. Resources are travelling into the state at this point in time to support us, given the days ahead and the significance of this weather event. The SES has been proactive in the week prior to this weather event, engaging with communities, getting those safety messages out there, particularly around the Hawkesbury and Nepean, around the flood risk there. But across the entire state, as the Bureau have outlined, the impacts in the coming days now include inland New South Wales, mid-north coast is about to get hammered again. The south coast is potentially going to cop some weather as well. So this is very much a statewide weather event, which is requiring a statewide response. And as I said earlier, this is very much an all agencies, all government response to this unfolding situation. And those resources are working very well together. And we're really asking the community to assist us by making sure you're aware and you're planning accordingly to make sure you and your families and your pets are safe.
Dean, I guess just running off the back of something Justin said where he's flagging that this isn't going to be what we're used to when we see flooding, that it sort of goes up and drops away quickly. It's potentially running for multi-day, which means that tonight obviously is going to be quite an issue, and a Sunday night in particular. Is the suggestion, if people are in those areas, that they really need to start considering that even if they're not in trouble yet, they could be, and that they need to sort of take action while they've still got daylight?
Absolutely. Being prepared is chiefly important at this point in time. Particularly if you live in a flood-prone or a low-lying area, it's going to be subject to some of this heavy weather, or already is. there's no harm in preparing. Have a plan in place, prepare some items that you will need to take with you, if it's medication or key paperwork. Have an identified location that you would go to, understand the route you would take to get there, and if things escalate, proactively move to a safer location if you have that option, even prior to any evacuation warnings being issued. This is, as the Bureau have outlined, a dynamic weather situation. It's changing all the time and it's changing rapidly. Prior planning and preparation is key, and that's the message we're trying to get out to the community. Be aware, even if it's not raining where you're located at this point in time, or if there's been a lift in the weather. The forecast looks like it's going to worsen in some areas again, particularly on the mid-north coast. So be aware of your risk. Reach out to your friends and family. Make sure they're aware of the risk and that they're planning accordingly as well.
Hey, could I just get a bit of a run through of what the next sort of 12 to 24 hours looks like? Just a quick overview of where we're going to see the most heavy rain in particular.
Over the next 12 to 24 hours, the focus really will be on the mid-north coast once again. So already seeing rainfall there, but we are expecting that to really re-intensify, particularly tomorrow. So again, that additional rainfall falling on obviously areas that have just experienced some pretty significant flooding. It's not going to be as heavy as what we saw in the days prior, but we're still looking at rainfall totals that could be as high as 200 to 300 millimetres. So again, just being really focused, that is our key area of concern. But broadly, we are seeing rainfall across the New South Wales coast in that next 12 to 24 hours. And again, it will continue through till Wednesday, which will be that first day where we'll see a break in the weather.
How long has it been since we've seen something like this?
Yeah, well, for the mid-north coast, it is a record rainfall event. So either for March, for daily totals, for the monthly totals that we're seeing, so the heaviest totals that we've seen so far just over the last several days is 795 millimetres at Red Oak. And keeping in mind that we are expecting more rainfall in the area. So already a record rainfall event with more rainfall on the way.
And Dean, maybe just one more, just given the context. Obviously, at the moment, we've got, I think it's something like 20 or just under evacuation centres set up for people who can't access friends and family and self-evacuate. I guess one of the questions at the moment is around COVID and evacuation centres. Just to confirm, the advice is the evacuations and the evacuation centres trump any of the COVID advice, right?
This is a potentially life-threatening weather event, so people need to make those decisions and act accordingly to keep themselves and their families safe from floodwaters in particular. Obviously, the evacuation centres will be employing the appropriate COVID safety guidelines as is reasonable and as appropriate at this time.